Welcome to this festive macrame tutorial from Knots & Crosses Crafty Kits. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to make snowflakes, Christmas trees, candy canes, and cinnamon stick wall hangings. You can find timestamps for each of the decorations in the video description. This simple snowflake uses 3 knots: lark's head, square, and alternating square knot. You can find links to each of these individual knot tutorials in the description of this video. Attach your 10 cords to your wooden ring using lark's head knots. Ensure that each of the strands from each knot are of equal length. Once you've attached all 10 cords to your wooden ring, attach it to a macrame or corkboard for something easy to pull against. Now tie 5 square knots around the edge of the wooden ring. We're now going to tie 5 alternating square knots, with each knot sitting between 2 square knots. In order to keep your snowflake lying flat, don't be tempted to tighten your alternating square knots very tightly up against the previous square knots. You'll see from the video that they are a little bit looser in their position. Tie one more single square knot underneath your most recent alternating square knots. With a sharp pair of scissors, trim the loose ends to your desired length. I'd recommend about 3 to 4 centimeters at this stage, as you are able to trim it further later on. Brush out the ends, and then before giving it a final trim, just gently tighten the final knot at each point. Thread a piece of natural jute, some ribbon or some floristry wire through your snowflake to display. We're now going to make some Christmas trees. These use the simple square knot and wrapping knots, although the square knot is started a little bit differently to what you might be used to. Take your short cord and fold it in half. Place it vertically in front of you. Secure it with a pin to a macrame or corkboard, as it is much easier to have something to pull against. Take the long cord and fold it in half. Place it behind the vertical cord horizontally with the midpoint underneath the vertical cord. Bring the 2 horizontal strands on either side round to the front and, using the 2 vertical strands as your inner strands, tie a single square knot using the 2 longer strands as your 2 outer strands. Now tie a second square knot directly underneath, but leave a gap of approximately 1 centimetre when tightening the knot. Make sure that your 2 outer strands on either side of the gap are equal lengths. Then simply slide the square knot up the inner strands to be against the first square knot. This will create 2 small loops on either side. Tie a third square knot underneath, but leave a slightly bigger gap this time. Tighten the knot, then slide it up the inner strands. This will create a wider loop and the start of the triangle of your Christmas tree. Repeat the process to tie 3 more square knots. Make sure you increase the gap each time between the square knots in order to form the triangle shape of your tree. Tie a wrapping knot around the loose ends at the bottom of your chain of square knots. Feed the hanging loop through the gold bead and then gently pull on the loose ends to secure all the knots. Brush out the ends and trim to size. Now we're going to make candy canes. These use crown knots and wrapping knots. You have one long white cord and one long red cord. Take one of the colours and place it in front of you horizontally, with the midpoint in the middle of a corkboard. Then take the other colour, fold it in half, and place it vertically in front of you, matching the midpoints. Take a pin and secure both midpoints to the corkboard or macrame board. Bring the end of the top strand around to the right and over the horizontal strand on the right. Then do the same with the bottom strand, bringing it round to the left and over the top of the horizontal strand on the left. Now feed the end of the horizontal strand on the right over the top, over to the left and through the loop as indicated. And then repeat with the other side. Gently pull the ends of the strands away from the centre. It's best to pull two strands of the same colour at the same time, until the knot is fully tightened around the pin. The centre should have a checkered look. You've just completed your first crown knot. Repeat the process and tie 2 or 3 more crown knots. Remove the pin and replace it with the piece of wire. Reattach your candy cane to the board with the pin, making sure that the pin is out of the way of future knots. Continue tying more crown knots until you have approximately 14 centimetres in a chain. Trim the end of the wire before tying a wrapping knot around all of the loose ends. Gently pull on the loose ends to secure all of the knots. Trim the ends to size and then brush out. You can now bend your candy cane into the desired shape. An alternative to simply placing your candy cane over a branch is to sew a small piece of thread into the top. These beautiful cinnamon wall hangings are a lovely addition to a tree or could even be hung over the mirror in your car. They use 2 knots, a lark's head and a double half hitch. In-depth video tutorials for both of these can be found in the description of this video. Attach 3 of the long cords to the cinnamon stick using a lark's head knot. Make sure the knots are nice and tight against the cinnamon stick. Now move all 3 knots along to the left so that the knot that is farthest to the right is sat in the centre of the stick. Number your strands from 1 to 4, moving from the right to the left. Using strand 4 as your filler cord, tie 3 double half hitch knots in a semicircle shape. Remember that your filler cord forms the static core of your semicircle. Therefore, you should always hold the filler cord when tightening the knots in the final shape that you want your line of knots to appear, i.e. a semicircle. Don't be tempted to tighten your double half hitch knots too tight either in a hanging of this style. You're now going to attach your filler cord to your cinnamon stick using a single strand lark's head knot, sometimes called a running lark's head knot. Feed the filler cord over the stick and away from you, and then back under and towards you to the left. Pull it across to the right to lock it in place, and then feed it underneath the stick, over the top and towards you, and down through the loop that you've just created. This will form a lark's head knot. Repeat the process to tie a second semicircle flush against the first semicircle using strand 6 as your filler cord. After you've tied your third double half hitch knot on your second semicircle, you will need to add your shorter cord to the filler cord using a reverse lark's head knot. Now that you've tied your third double half hitch knot in your second semicircle, attach the short cord to the filler cord using a reverse lark's head knot. A reverse lark's head knot is almost identical to a regular lark's head knot. The only difference is that you feed the midpoint underneath rather than over the top to start off the knot. Then just feed the loose strands through the loop to tighten. Slide the reverse lark's head knot along the filler cord, snug up against the most recent double half hitch knot, and then ignore that strand that you just added before continuing to tie double half hitch knots with the remaining 2 strands. Attach your filler cord to the cinnamon stick using a single strand lark's head knot, just like before. If you wish to tie a third semicircle, just attach your remaining long cord to the cinnamon stick using a regular lark's head knot before tying your third and final semicircle. Of the 2 strands that have emerged from this lark's head knot, strands 7 and 8, strand 8 on the far left will be your filler cord. Attach your filler cord to the cinnamon stick, again with a single strand lark's head knot. Trim your hanging to the desired length and then brush out. You could thread wire, ribbon or thread through the inside of the cinnamon stick and display from the tree. I really hope you enjoyed learning how to make these macrame Christmas decorations with me today. I love to see pictures of your work, so please don't forget to tag Knots and Crosses Crafty Kits in any of your projects. And don't forget to subscribe for more mindful macrame knot tutorials.